Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. In this lesson, I'm going to show you a lot of different ways to talk about how sure you are about things in the future. Welcome back to Let's Speak English, and I'm Lalita and I'm here with another lesson for you. Before we start, a quick reminder for you to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel Let's Speak English. So that way you will be notified every time I upload a new lesson. Now let's get started. So in this lesson, we are going to look at a lot of different ways to talk about certainty, probability, and possibility in the future. Let's look at an imaginary scale and some different adjectives related to the different points on that scale. We'll begin at 0 with impossible. Then between 0 and 5 we have unlikely, and at 5 we have possible, and between 5 and 10 we have probable or likely, and finally at 10 we have certain. Now let's look at some example sentences for each part of the scale. Okay, so let's talk about Michael. Imagine he went for a job interview for which he wasn't well prepared. He didn't show any interest in the position, and he even had an argument with the interviewer. So let's look at the scale, and we can tell at point 0 it's impossible he'll get the job. You can also say the same thing to sound more fluent. It's impossible he'll get the job. You can drop the word that. Moving on, let's move to the next part in the scale. Now imagine Michael did prepare a little, but he didn't answer the questions well. So we can say it's unlikely he'll get the job. Let's move. Now let's imagine that the interview did go well and he made a good impression, but he doesn't seem to have enough experience. So we can say it's possible he'll get the job. Moving on. For the next example, we'll imagine Michael made a great impression and he has all the qualification and experience than any other applicants. So we can say it's probable that he will get the job, or it's likely he'll get the job. Moving on. For the last of the examples on the simple sentences, we'll imagine Michael was the only person invited for the interview and the company really wants to hire him. So we can say it's certain he'll get the job. So those were some of the simple sentences to express the degrees of certainty about future. Now let's look at some other possibilities about Michael and his job. Moving on, let's look at some examples for the point 0 at the start of the session. We started with it's impossible. The different ways of saying that is, he definitely won't get the job. Or you can say there's absolutely no chance or way he'll get the job. Another way of saying that is, the chances that he'll get the job are 0. So those are the different ways you can talk about point 0. Now let's look at some examples for number 1 on the scale. So there's almost no chance he'll get the job, or you can also say there's virtually no chance he'll get the job. Another way is it's very unlikely or highly unlikely that he will get the job. Another beautiful way of saying that is the likelihood he'll get the job is very low. Another way is the chances he'll get the job are very low. So those were some of the examples for point 1. Great. Now let's move on to the next point on our scale and look at the first sentence we discussed earlier for points between 2 and 3. We said it's unlikely he'll get the job. Now another way of saying, or another ways of saying the same thing are, there's a small chance he'll get the job, or a slim chance he'll get the job, or a slight or remote chance he'll get the job. We can also say he'll probably won't get the job. So those are different ways to talk about between point 2 and 3. Let's move now to the next one. Let's look at some different ways to talk about the middle of the scale between 4 and 5. There's a slight possibility he'll get the job. That was the first sentence we discussed. Other ways of saying that is, it's possible that he'll get the job, or he'll possibly get the job. Another beautiful way of saying that is, there's a possibility he'll get the job. So that is to talk about different ways to talk about the middle of the scale. Let's move on to another way of saying between point 6 and 7. Now here there is a strong possibility. So what can we say? There's a strong possibility he'll get the job. Moving on. Now let's look at the part of the scale, that part of the scale which was at point 8. Okay. So it's probable he'll get the job, or he'll probably get the job. There's a good chance he'll get the job. So those are the different ways or different expressions we can use to talk about probability and possibility in future. And moving on, let's look at different ways of talking about point 9 on the scale. Now, there's almost no doubt he'll get the job. A point to note here is the pronunciation of the word doubt. It is doubt. The B in the word remains silent. Doubt. Another way of saying that is, it's almost or virtually certain he'll get the job. The likelihood he'll get the job is very high is another way of saying that. The chances he'll get the job are very high. So in all these sentences, we are talking about the probability of Michael getting the job being very high. Now finally, let's take a look at different ways to talk about the highest point of the scale. So if you remember our example, it's certain he'll get the job. Let's look at other ways of saying he'll definitely get the job. Another way, there's absolutely no doubt he'll get the job. So those are the different ways in which you can talk about certainty, probability and possibility. Hopefully you liked the session and the session was helpful to you. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, Let's Speak